TV, as we get closer to spring, I give you all access, but you have to stay there. Who are you going to watch on day one of practice?
All actors have to stay there.
You have to stay with that position group.
I'm going to, and this is cheating a little bit, but I'm going to the D line edge group.
Oh, you want them all, huh?
Um,
You just the front.
yeah, just a like yeah, like I want to see like Philip Simpson working with guys on pass rush moves, and it's all the guys that are coming off the end, and Deshaun Williams and Nwaneri, Willis McGahee, those guys. I think that's probably the room that has the most intrigue for me, just in terms of I just want to figure out where these guys are at this point in the spring.
If you could draw it up in a lab, where would Williams? What size would he be for you, weight wise?
Uh
He's kind.
oh
He
wait,
could
say
go.
that again.
He in Winari. Where? What weight would he play at if you could put him together in the lab? Because he has a lot of range.
Yeah, I mean, for me, hypothetically, I mean, they say he's at 270 now. Like, ideally, I'd want him up to maybe 280, 285, but that's like pushing it. Even like 270, like, I wanted him at 270 for this season. And the fact that he's already there, I'm very interested to see what they get him up to by the fall, or if they just keep him here. Because I think 270 is a pretty solid playing weight for him as a sophomore, considering what I think he'll be asked to do, which is primarily just rushing off the edge.
If weight was important to one or the other, is it McCullough or Nwaneri?
I think it's Nwaneri because we've seen McCullough produce at his current weight. We've seen him be able to rush the passer at an effective level. I mean, for his long-term career, I think Deshaun's going to have to get up a little more. But at this point in college, I think he's fine where he's at.
Mm. So I'm glad you brought up kind of that edge group, Tim, because we've sort of been having this discussion all week about Nwaneri
Two
and
weeks.
yeah, for however long it's been about kind of the fact that it seems like Nebraska fans are a little hesitant to get their hopes up for a guy that, I mean, just a year ago was a five-star top 10 recruit in the country. Normally, we'd be losing our minds over a guy like that coming to Nebraska. And it seems like people are a little hesitant. And so I'm curious, A, why you think that is, and B, if there's real reason for that hesitancy in your mind.
Um, Answering the second part of that, yeah, I understand the hesitancy and I understand why it's there. I mean, part of it to me, I just feel like, I mean, even talking to fans now, like, we're writing 2027 recruits and stuff, and guys are like, we just kind of don't care because these guys will be gone in a year. So that's the whole thing. Part of the issue with the transfer portal is these fans can see kind of where these guys come from and what they've done previously, and a 1 year transfer, even with the highly the accolades in the background, there's going to be some concern there. I mean, you see what's happening, at A&M now. I was a big Micah Hudson fan coming out of high school. Like I covered that kid since he was a sophomore in high school. I genuinely think there are times watching him in high school I thought I was watching a Garrett Wilson clone.
Mm.
And he transferred out of St. Texas Tech after 1 year with barely any production, went to A&M, is already out of A&M, and no one's really sure what's going to happen with him because he's got to finish out the semester at A&M before he can transfer anywhere. And as of right now, no one really knows where he is. And so you're seeing other issues elsewhere with former five stars. And so I understand the hesitancy there. I'll say this about Nwaneri. I think some of the issues at Missouri were there was no one really around to hold him accountable, and there was no one really around that he had built a good enough relationship with where he felt, okay, the juice is going to be worth the squeeze here. Like what they're asking me to do is going to be worth it. It's very different at Nebraska because he built these relationships with the coaching staff, and on top of that, his high school head coach, who got the most out of him in high school, Jamar Mosey, is on staff as well, holding him accountable. He's got multiple people like Isaiah Mosey around to hold him accountable, multiple people from Missouri to hold him accountable, and then you've got Terry Braden, who I've said this multiple times. I think what Terry Braden and what the Chiefs did with Chris Jones over the last few years, specifically adjusting his role to come off the edge more and be more of a
Yeah.
defensive end. I think that's exactly what the goal should be with Williams and Nwaneri.
That's funny you bring up CJ because as his weight fluctuated and he grew, what they allowed him to do in being multiple changed as well, whether he was going to be interior, outside, the ability to move him. I could see that analogy, I guess is the word, working with William, given his body type does have range.
Right, right. And the thing with him is at his size, you go watch his tape. The what had him highly ranked and all of that early on was he's got some natural bend and some natural just pass rush ability at that size that you don't find. Like this isn't a guy like we're talking about the draft currently. Everyone's talking about the draft and these edge rushers like, oh, we've got all these freaky testers, like a Shamar Stewart and all these guys, but they don't have production or they don't know how to rush the passer. You don't really need to worry about that Williams and Nwaneri. Like all the passer stuff is in there already. It's about like him getting the weight up, him, kind of making a run and kind of putting it all together. But the passer stuff is there naturally. You just need to see, more effort, more consistency. And then as a run defender, you need to see that part of the game improve. But in my opinion, like with the physical tools he has, some of that can be taught, but you can't teach some of the natural bend and pass rush ability he has.
So you're uniquely situated to answer this question that we've been speculating about. We'll take Williams and Nwaneri on one hand. We'll take Elijah Pritchett on the other hand. Which do you think a success story for Nebraska? And let's call that they each are productive and turn into a first-round draft pick. So that's a pretty high bar, I would say. Which one of those two, reaching that bar, pays the most dividends for Nebraska in either the transfer portal or high school recruiting?
I think Nebraska will get more credit for Pritchett if they were able to get the most out of him, just because there's film on tape of him not being good, and there's film of him being inconsistent. And that Alabama film last year, there's some games where like, okay, you can kind of see the vision here. Then the games out there, it's like, oh, just burn this tape, like throw it all out. Like there's nothing good on here from him. Like that's just the reality of the situation. And so I think with Nwaneri, like, you listen to Deshaun McCullough say that's a guy that can be a future first-round pick. They've been saying this about Williams and Nwaneri since, he started putting weight on in high school. He looks the part of a future first-rounder. Like, there's part of me that thinks, yeah, Nebraska could probably get a really productive player out of him and potentially a future first-round pick, but they might not get the credit because people will just naturally credit the natural physical gifts. Just be like, oh, well, good on Nebraska for getting him, but, and, they'll also dismiss it as, oh, Jamar Mosey was on staff. It's just because of Jamar Mosey. And, all these different things. But I think Elijah Pritchett, that's like, oh, you went out and got somebody. You saw something no one else did because, at this point he had a year of inconsistent tape. And you went out and you developed him. And also for Donovan Raiola, that's the reclamation project he needs to, like, stamp and get out there on the recruiting trail and be like, hey, Jackson Can't. Well, here's an example of us developing. Hey, Kenny Pepe, here's an example of us developing. Like that's something that would probably change the ceiling Donovan Raiola would have to recruit with as well.
Tim, so okay, that's day one, and Coach Rowe's like, man, Tim, you really know ball, man. I'm gonna bring you back for one more day, but you have to fill your content for a week with this one remaining time that I'm gonna let you shoot your shot again. You're done with the edge rushers and the front. Who's the next group for the week of content?
If I need to fill out a week of content, I'm going to the DB room because there's so many names. I could get a week out of content of just like, okay, here are the guys to watch in 2025. Here are the guys that I think could make a jump in 26. And if you really want to, let's stash away some of these names for 2027.
Yeah.
You might get a week's worth of content just naming the guys in the room.
Yeah.
Although I will say this, I think that's the room that will thin the fastest. That room will thin out the fastest. So, what I thought you might say, and it's not because of the volume, but I thought you might like the tight ends. That's a very interesting room, and I think they're a little overlooked.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, part of it is with the spring is I don't know how much we're going to see a Mac. I don't know how much we're going to see a Carter. But like if we had those two guys in the room, that's a top choice for sure. Just because I mean, I want to see where those guys are at. I want to see how they're developing. I want to see, okay, how different are they using Mac Markway versus a Heinrich Harburg? How far along is Heinrich Harburg compared to Carter Nelson, and vice versa. Like yeah, that room's really fascinating. And then there's Luke Lindemeyer in there. You have so many different names in there right now that really fascinate. I mean, like I'm still fascinated by what Eric Ingerson could be.
Yeah, me too. Me too. A guy that doesn't need a babysitter, and he's a big, strong, mean kid. Like he gets it, and I think we've kind of forgotten about him.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you think about who got promoted or who saw the field more once Dana Holgerson took over. It was guys that, like you said, don't need a babysitter, can take care of themselves, can block, can go out there and do things. I mean, we talk about Ingerson as a potential position change candidate down the line as a guy that could potentially move into offensive line or whatever, but you like the blocking ability already at tight end. Like, again, what if, like, there's a world where I can see, I just don't think we're talking about him enough in that tight end room.
Yeah.
So, it's funny you bring Ingerson up because I've been thinking a lot about him in relation to the Nate Borkacher departure as well. And that's a guy, at least body type wise.
He's kind of one of one in that room. Yeah, he's significantly bigger than Lindemeyer. He's more of an inline guy than a guy like Carter Nelson if he came back to tight end.
Yeah.
He's the most natural of the combo guys in terms of his frame.
But he sort of seems like he almost did sort of, I don't want to say push out, but like his body type sort of replaces the Borkacher body type, right? Because Borkacher was the one of one in that room before. And I just wonder how much the one had to do with the other, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it was as much that. I mean, like the Borkacher thing is yeah, I mean, the numbers I've heard that he was getting, like he kind of had to enter the portal.
And he wanted tape. He I think, he it just to secure kind of not secure, but to be in a better spot to get paid to play. I think he wanted opportunity after opportunity. So I think he went where he could play the most.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I mean, you would think so, but also again, you look at that A&M tight end room, and you're like, are you sure? I don't know. I'm very interested to see how this fall goes for him.
Tim, as we kind of think about spring football here, I wonder how you feel today about a guy like Mac Markway, because I know we're not going to see him in the spring. But speaking of guys that we sort of haven't talked about a lot, and I understand it more with Markway than I do with Nwaneri because of how he showed up here. But is that a guy that you think, in terms of how he'll be impactful in the fall, we should probably be talking about more?
Yeah, definitely. Because I think if you're hesitant about Markway, I think you should go back and watch what he did at LSU. This isn't a guy that, was unproductive at LSU and then bounced after, like just being frustrated by a room that was more talented than him. This is a guy that produced as a freshman, did all the right things, and by all accounts, you talk to people down there, like he's a good competitor. He worked hard. He did all the right things, answered all the questions, saw the field, and was a very sound tight end. But what LSU's offense is doing and what you're seeing them doing is a completely different thing with their tight ends. They brought in 2 6'6", 6'7" tight ends, and just have those guys out there now. And so, like they had Mason Taylor at the top of the room. Like they just asked for a different thing out of the tight ends, and so Markway just wasn't a fit in that room anymore. But you look at what he could do in Nebraska, and you look at the room at Nebraska, where you got Heinrich Harburg at the top, a big body, big athletic body that can do some things, but you're not really sure how many things he can do yet. You don't know if you can trust him to block just yet. You don't know all of those things. Then you've got Lindemeyer, who's a good blocker and can do enough in space, but you don't really know how much. Then you've got Carter Nelson, who's complete unknown for the most part, just because it's a position change. You got to figure out the blocking. You got to figure out these things. Markway at the very floor from what we saw at LSU, is a good blocker, can line up in line, can line up in space, can do more than enough in space as a pass catcher. Can do some of those shallow routes and turn upfield and run. And when you're running, like multiple tight ends on the field and you're going heavy, he doesn't have to be taken off the field for another tight end. You can line him up right inside, with those other guys. I think at the very highest floor, he's Nebraska's safest and most I guess outside of Lindenmeyer, most reliable tight end. Just because I think Lindenmeyer is that at this point, is the most reliable as a blocker and a pass catcher. But I mean, Markway's right there, and that's why I just think he's a safe pick, very high floor, high enough ceiling that there's still some untapped potential in there. Yeah, he's a guy that I think is going to play a good bit this fall.
So, okay, so we went DBs and we went defense, like kind of defensive line, kind of by design of where your interest lies for the spring. That none of the offense kind of cracked or piqued your interest if you only got a couple of days.
Yeah, I'm interested by how the offensive line figures itself out, but there's so much unknown there, and two, with the injuries, I just don't think we're going to get a clear enough picture of that line this spring. I think that's going to be like figuring out the tackle spots and figuring out where to slot like Henry Lutovsky in. It's something that's going to have, and Gunnar Gatula in. It's something I think is going to have to wait for fall camp. And so that's why like offensive line is something for me that I'm just waiting till fall. And then the receiver room, like I'm very intrigued by that room, but weirdly I'm comfortable with that room. Like I know Dane Key's wide receiver one. I know Isaiah Hunter is coming in with some production, and I know he's going to play something of a role. We know what Ja'Cory Barney is. We know, I mean, multiple people, staff members and talking to sources and everyone talks about Hartley Gilmore at this point. You figure that guy's going to contribute. And then, yeah, you're intrigued by the room behind him. Where's Cortez? How far along is Cortez Mills? We've heard he's pretty far along. Where's Isaiah Mosey? Where are some of these guys behind them? But I feel like I'm comfortable with the receiver room enough to I don't think it's going to be an issue, and I don't think it's not that it's not intriguing, but I know what I'm going to get from them. I feel like.
Mm. Are you surprised at all that Hartley Gilmore's kind of gotten as much run as he has, considering he doesn't have the production of a Hunter or a Key?
I think it's gonna be tough.
You look at the film. Yeah, it's just he's a guy, man. I like the high school film, and then you take into account that the most recent high school film he's playing at like 15 or 16 years old because he reclassified. So he's going to be like 18, going through spring ball. Like I just think it's kind of a thing where he's just grown up now, and so you like the flashes you've seen, and now it's an adult making moves and doing those things. So I'm very fascinated by Gilmore, and I think he's going to be a household name. I don't even think it's going to take till the quote unquote spring game. I think like a couple weeks into spring, everyone's going to be talking about Hartley Gilmore.
It's going to be interesting because I think the thing, and maybe it's not. Well, it could be a Gilmore thing, or just the new guys in general. I think the greatest hurdle for this group coming in will be the rigor, because even guys that have been there, like year 1 to year 2 mat drills, or team commitment week, or what's going to be asked of these guys from a caloric intake to your nutrition to your treatment to your rest to the ability to repeat something all the time at a certain level. I think rigor will be something that will be the great separator for ultimately a very competitive football team. Just the ability to repeat and do what you're told to do every single day. Because if what the coaching staff has been saying all off season about just play football and close losses are just we're not good enough and don't believe the hype and just get better at football and don't be a slogan team, and I just get the sense that's what's being emphasized every day with these guys since they've been on campus. I think rigor will be the great separator, not so much talent.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be all about that, and I'll probably get out of here with a little nugget here. So
I like nuggets.
When I was in the All-American Bowl, and I was kind of like trying to learn about Hartley Gilmore and figure it out. I was talking to some people familiar with South Florida. So there's a training or essentially an academy called True Prep Academy in South Florida, where a bunch of these guys down there essentially go and they take care of their academics there. But you know how it is, like in South Florida specifically, for those unfamiliar, a lot of guys end up bouncing around multiple high schools and playing with the best high schools. So they do their schooling all at True Prep Academy. So at one point in middle school and early high school, Hartley Gilmore, Cortez Mills, Ja'Cory Barney were all like True Prep Academy classmates. And they were training together off the field, even though they were all at different high schools. They've been training together. So, two of them, Gilmore or Cortez and Barney specifically, grew up together. But the three have known each other for a very long time. There's a natural competitiveness there, and we talked so much in the fall and spring about how Ja'Cory Barney elevates the competitiveness in the room. What if there's three guys competing at the same level and they all are competing against each other and they've known each other for years? That's going to elevate the whole room, the competitiveness between that whole room. I think those three guys are going to bring out the best, not just in each other, but they're going to push Dane Key. They're going to push Isaiah Hunter. When Demetrius Bell gets back, they're going to push him. Like, it's going to be good for the room that those three are in there competing against each other and competing against the rest of the room.
That's our guy, Tim Verghese.
Not bad. Not bad, TV, man. I look forward to this segment every week. That's not going to get much more comprehensive, man. Well done.
And we'll try and get your name right next week.
Yeah. And I'll try to open with something different than how's your bracket.
All right, listen, we're getting spring ball viewing next week, so we'll have plenty to talk about.
Oh, yeah, no question. Good talk, bud. See you next week.
Yes, sir. Talk next week.